start out by, I just wanted to read what you guys see on the PowerPoint, but I'd really like to dig into who's on our panel. And I'm going to start with Peter, who is second to your left. Peter is an operations manager, and he specializes in hydroponic refuse extraction. He's been doing that for 16 years. Peter's involved in the greenhouse industry for 20 years as well, and he has been privy to many stages in operations and production. Peter's mechanical and technical expertise makes him confident that he can bolster the often understated end of production cycle. We're talking post-harvest, okay? Remove the old and make way for the new. They are closing the gap, and that is their company in a nutshell. And it's very exciting. If you actually go to Fair Shredding, they have an amazing video that articulates what they do, and it's really interesting to watch real time. And Joseph is in the middle to Peter's left, your right. And Joseph comes from Apple, Apple Computers, 7 years, and he is a marketing guru. And rewind, before Apple, he accidentally had a felon for possession. And so thank you for what you do and living your life how you've lived. And after your felony was expunged, you wanted to be a contribution again, once again, into this industry that is now becoming legal and efficacious. And we're really excited to have you in the industry, and it's a privilege to have your expertise as a marketing and branding expert on the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here, Joseph. And we have Dave, which is on my far end over there. Dave, thanks for coming. Dave is with Gold Flora. Let me find my notes on Dave. Dave is the director of cultivation at Gold Flora. And he's been working in the cannabis industry for 10 years in 4 different states. And that would be Michigan, Colorado, Oregon, and California. Dave has fine-tuned his craft of growing cannabis on a commercial scale, and he's passionate about automation, building strong teams, and being a leader in the developing industry. Dave specializes in facility design, automation, supply chain management, compliance, metric tracking systems, and big data analytics. He's out to improve the workflow, development of SOPs, and assisting research that enhances both quality of product and overall business. Dave has an integral part of Curaleaf and M. Jardin Group, and these 2 companies have a national footprint and have gone public. Currently, Gold Flora is building one of the largest cannabis facilities in the nation, with a full range of cannabis companies, including cultivation testing, packaging, consulting, branding, and distributing. So Dave, welcome. Really nice to have you. Thank you. And last, but certainly not least, is Greg Gamet. And Greg Gamet, too, is with Gold Flora. And he is one of the leading entrepreneurs, educators, and executives in the cannabis industry. He has co-founded and managed a variety of cannabis-based businesses, including cultivation facilities, medical and rec dispensaries, a packaging company, consulting company, a canna-focused real estate company, and a software dev group focused on helping marijuana businesses stay compliant. Greg's ventures include Dank, Colorado, one of the first medical and recreational cannabis dispensaries in Denver. Kush Bottles, Colorado, the market leader in child-resistant packaging for the industry. Denver Consulting Group, providing training and support to cannabis businesses nationwide. Purchased by Medicine Man Technologies. And CannaScore, a software development company that created a program to provide real-time compliance assessment with state regulations. In addition, Greg founded Elm Properties, a real estate management and construction company that owns, builds out, and operates commercial facilities for cannabis-based businesses. Recently, Greg joined Gold Flora Farms in the capacity of Chief Cannabis Officer. Is that a new title? I like that title. That's good. Gold Flora is building one of the largest cannabis complexes in the nation and will house a full range of companies, which I was talking about: cultivation, tech, packaging, consulting, branding, distributing. Basically a vertically integrated solution, it sounds like. So he's an investor in several cannabis companies, advised a number of companies in their transition from private to publicly traded businesses. Last, but certainly not least, congratulations on this, Greg. You were awarded Cannabis Entrepreneur of the Year in 2015, an acknowledgement of his many successes. Thank you very much, Greg. So let's get into let's skip over the niceties and get to the bang, pow meat of the talk. So before we ask questions, I'd just like to know who here has been in the industry for less than a year? Anyone just newbies? Okay, how about for less than 2 years? Okay, more than 3? Okay. More than 5? More than 10? Okay, all right. We just want to make sure we're gauging, how we answer, and this is good. This is a great spectrum. Okay, so I'd like to perhaps start with Peter. Let's just go from the post-production. It's quite interesting. Peter, after harvest, what challenges have you faced in regards to the post-harvest production?
Yeah, so speaking to that aspect of it, I would say probably the biggest thing for us is just communication. It's something that is so important in everything. I mean, we hear it all the time about communication, whether it's relationships or in a business setting. Big part for us is being able to know what's happening as far as the production cycle is concerned. Very often we find ourselves chasing down, where they're at in their production cycle, what their projections are as far as when they're going to be done with harvest and everything like that. Our specialty is to come in after harvest is done, get the plant matter out of the facility so that they can bring new plant matter in. We can do that quickly and efficiently, but we can only do that quickly and efficiently if we're being communicated to. So a lot of that has to do with, setting up, whether it's the logistics of the different components that we use for the extraction, as far as rolling out tarps in a greenhouse setting, which is definitely where we have most of our experience, or all of it for that matter. And then getting the plants onto those tarps and then being able to get our machines in there to be able to take and pull that plant matter out. That also means communicating space, making sure that they have whatever waste management that they want to use with us, in conjunction with us. That's for them to take and coordinate as well. So, a lot of that has to do with calling back and forth and organizing all that, having that set up. We have clients that are really good at that, where they have their hierarchy set up so that the people know where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, and what's supposed to be set up. And things can go really quick. We also have clients that are maybe a little bit more laid back. Maybe they are a new client and this is the first time that they're really using our service. And then we tend to run into some hiccups. We try to be creative about, how we take care of that and look after that. But there's only so much we can do. But that communication is so key to really make sure that everybody knows what their place is, where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, so that everything can move along without a hitch. Because, the quicker you can get the crop out that you're done with, that you don't need there anymore, the sooner you can put a new crop in there, and the sooner you can take and get back onto the production cycle again.
Peter, a follow-up question to that would be, let's compare contrast a farmer not using your service versus a farmer using your service. What is the impact of your logistical efficiencies?
So what we found, again, like I said, it's on the agricultural side of things, with regards to tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, that sort of thing. But what used to take farmers anywhere from around 2 weeks or so to do, where they would be trying to pull their product out of the facility so that they could clean it and get it ready for a new crop, we can do that same job in a matter of a day. Our selling point is that we can do 1 acre of removal in an hour. So depending on the size of the facility, we come in there, if they've got 10 acres in one block or 15 acres in one block, we can typically do that in a one-day shot. So, I mean, the biggest impact on that we've seen is that, they used to have to take and start the process with getting the plants out, spending 2 weeks, pulling everything out of the way, and then, move on to the cleaning process. With us being able to do the same job in a day, they're able to leave their plants in for an extra 2 weeks, which means 2 more weeks of production from those plants, which means they're making, I mean, it depends on the scale of the company, even on a very small scale, you're still talking, tens of thousands of dollars. On a large scale, if you've got a big enough facility, you're pushing into millions of dollars that they're able to still generate. For that matter, also it is too, if we can take some commodities cycle quicker. Some are annual commodities, but some cycle from 8 to 10 weeks. And so if we're taking and we're locking off 2 weeks of time each cycle throughout the year, they're going to get that extra cycle into the year and be able to generate that much more revenue. And that's really where what we do well is just taking and close, like Amy said, we close that gap. We want to help people be able to take and do what makes them the most money, which is producing. The more you can produce, the more money you're making, the better the industry does. And for us, the industry is a community, right? If all of us do well, then all of us can benefit from that. And that's really what we want.
And 2 weeks is quite a lot of time in our industry. So that's quite efficient and impressive. Why don't we move to Dave, who is the Director of Cultivation at Gold Flora. And Dave, what is your biggest challenge at the present time? Why don't you just get into what you're struggling with and also how you would love to navigate a new farmer?
Yeah, so I think the biggest struggle right now would be just making sure that everything is, all your T's are crossed, all your I's are dotted, and working completely in compliance within the law. So navigating that space, making sure that everything that we do is within the regulations of the state, and which means working with engineers, architects to build out, your space, being ADA compliant, making sure everything is kosher on the state level.
If you could give us like 5 big ones, right? 5. Like you have to know this, right? As a Nubian or someone that's been in this for 2 or 3 years, what would you say the top 5 takeaways would be?
So one would be metric compliance, so making sure you're learning about how to use the track and trace system that's set up for California and it's being implemented across the state. Second is making sure you're really conscious of your harvest schedule and your flow cycle, making sure you can maximize the square footage of your building and the number of harvests you can do per room. Usually can be between 5 or maximum 6, unless you're going to do some shorter flowering cycles. Third would be implementing your SOPs in place, making sure everything is tight as far as your processes of how you do every step along the growing process. Fourth would be, cleanliness, making sure that yourself and your employees are not, cross-contaminating the rooms with different things that could be being brought into the building or into the building once you have something, a pest or pathogen, making sure they don't go between rooms, implementing, proper safety clothing, hair nets, beard nets, IVAC suits, lab coats, uniforms. Then fifth, I would say, would be hammering once you get an organization and making sure that all of your notes are meticulous as far as what strains you're going to be growing and creating the harvest schedule and making sure you're sticking to your schedule so you can hit all the different harvests you want to do per year.
Fantastic. Okay, so you can take the 5th or not, it's your choice, but clearly you've been doing this for a while, and we all learn by mistakes. So if you could share something that, hindsight's always 20/20, right? Either you could share a lesson learned that was from, your portfolio or someone else's that you saw and go, whoa, never do that. Can you share for instance?
Yeah, thankfully I've been very, knock on wood, very blessed as far as not having too many big mistakes as far as harvest failures or anything like that. But in the past, I have seen issue with clearing out the lines between harvests. So you'll put in like zealot or some cleaning agents to clean the lines out, kind of make sure there's no gunk kind of left in those lines. And I've come in a few days after a weekend, and on a Monday, and on a Friday we had a harvest. The weekend crew, they cleaned the room, made sure everything's good in there, reloaded the room, watered the tables. I came in, and the plants looked like they were about to die. And it took me a day or so to figure out what happened, and they didn't clear out the bottom of the tank, and there was some zealot and some cleaning agents that were actually fed to the plants. Thankfully, cannabis is a very resilient and forgiving plant, and we're able to, persevere and flush the plants. And within a few weeks, they're starting to come back, and we're able to salvage the harvest. But just make sure that you double check your taste.
Okay, so you guys all took that note down. Thank you for that, Dave. So why don't we switch over to our marketing hats, right? As a farmer, as a master decision maker, you're making decisions on every front of your operation. Marketing and branding, that is literally the face to your operation. It's critical that the people and the audience that you're trying to engage will resonate the way you look, right? Is your brand wearing a tie, all nice and tight and commercial and engaging? That is just as important as cleaning the lines, as Dave was saying. So let's switch over to Joseph and talk about marketing and branding and how a farmer should be engaging that realm that's perhaps not in their lane. However, it's something that they're going to have to make decisions around. Can you just, help tee it up? What's up with marketing and branding?
It's one of those things that if anybody here has talked to marketing and branding people, you kind of get different answers from everybody, and sometimes a lot of emphasis seems to be put on things that don't feel like they're as important, and like you start building up these things. So before coming down here, I put some thought in this. So I have some definitions for everybody, if you'd like, that might make some of this stuff a little bit easier. So I'm going to redefine some of the terms that we already know. Let's start with your business, right? Your business is simply an entity that sells a good or a service, right? It has components, it has staff, it has all the necessary things that need to go into it to make it a business. It is essentially a sterile machine, right? Your brand is the identity of your business, okay? It's not the identity you necessarily want, it's the way you're viewed, right? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But it's who you are, it's how the public views you, it's how your competition views you. It is simply like the personality of the business. Branding itself, this is something that, if you keep in mind, it can kind of help narrow things down a little. Branding is really nothing more than the effort that you put into shaping that identity, all right? So it's the effort or lack of effort that you put into shaping that identity. A lot of people conflate branding and marketing. Marketing, the definition I'll give for that, is the promise that you make to usually the customer, the promise that you make about who your brand is and what your product is. You need to apply that identity to your marketing, but that's not that's not all of branding, right? That's the promise. So if you're going out there and you're promising, we're a company that cares about our employees, right? And you don't pay your employees anything, then that's who you really are, right? And that'll come out. And you're going to end up spending more money in like PR campaigns later trying to prove that you're not somebody that society maybe just saw you as, right? So once you've applied the marketing, the other part of the branding is the rest of your business. Customer service, right? Your corporate culture, right? That's going to come through. right? If you're a company that cares about the customer, but you treat everybody that calls you up like they're just trying to scam a free eighth off you, then that's going to be reflected. I mean, a lot of times when people call you on that customer service side, when they're telling you something, it's because they've aligned themselves with you. They're on your side and they're part of the team and want to help you. And then if you turn around and treat them like garbage, like they're just trying, somebody's going to scam, that's your identity. That's your brand, right? So when it comes to branding, well, a lot of times what we're doing as a business, whether it's cannabis or anything, you bring somebody in, you pay them a ton of money, and are they helping you figure out who you are, or are they telling you who you are? Like, here's who you are now. Here's your logo. Here's your company motto. Here's all your core values and beliefs. You're going to put them on the wall so people, when they walk by, they can see it, and it's going to magically make, your corporate culture change. It doesn't work that way. What you need to do, and you can do this on your own, right, is just kind of start to look at your brand's identity. And when you're new, you don't have one. You're a teenager, right? You are somebody kind of going through phases, looking for things. And if you're paying people to come up with new identities all the time, then you're just going to be spending a lot of money over and over again. So you need to reflect on your own brand, right? You need to reflect on the identity of that brand and what it means. And then from there, it's really about editing, right? Not overtelling, not overdoing, right? And if you're going to bring somebody in to help you, if you're going to hire somebody in to help you, they should be helping you refine that identity. And then from there, you know who you are, and you're like, okay, we have a general idea for a marketing theme. And then you can just bring in designers and developers. You don't have to go to somebody who's going to charge you a whole bunch of try to create an identity. Your identity's there, and you know based on what people put in front of you, okay, that is us. And a lot of you do it that already, right? You bring somebody in, and they're like, here's this is who you are now, and you're like, that's not me though. That's not the brand. That's not really who they are. But I guess, you got the master's degree, so you know best. So that's what we're going to go out and try to be. But you need to really figure out, like put down on paper, talk to your employees, find out everybody that works for you, how they see the brand. Find out what your goals are, right? Everybody's goal shouldn't be the biggest brand in the world, but if that's your goal, you need to kind of target a certain way. If you want to be Fresno's most popular local brand, that's amazing. That's a good goal to have, but that's your identity, and you need to brand that way. You need to just know who you are, right? You need to take that time and think about it, and you're gonna make mistakes, but in the end, if you're being sincere in those promises, when you go out and you do your marketing, and you're being sincere, this is really who we are, right? Or at least, who we're aspiring to be, then you're not gonna have a problem, right? But if you're trying to say you're something else, you're trying to live up to somebody else's image, right? So you need to, it's important to kind of edit out a lot of the noise and remember who you are, right? Remember who your brand is. And also get input. There's a little way I like to think about this. It's a bit of a contradiction, but when kind of figuring out who your brand is, that identity, a thing that I like to think about is this: you need to always be true to yourself, right? And your brand, the people who work for you, and the things that you believe in, and your values and your goals, and all those things. You need to be true to that. And also, nobody cares what you like; they like what they like. So stop talking about it. Right? When you can kind of marry those two ideas together and figure out how to put your identity out there without being like, hey, this is everything I like and you better like it too, right? Then things will kind of start to come together. It'll start to be easier, and you won't be jumping from one foot to the other, trying to be something that you're not. People respond to sincerity. It's great to have a good logo, but have it look cool, right? That's important. Get some attention, right? But once you have their attention, what are you going to do? Like if you grab everybody's attention and say, hey, we're the greatest thing in the world, and then you don't back it up, back to the beginning. That's your brand. I turn on the TV and I see, various cable networks that all promise me that they have the best customer service in the world. That is not true. That is not my cable company's brand, even though that's what they keep telling us, right? That's what they keep saying. Their brand is fast internet and, good luck when you give us a call. But that's who we know. That's what we know, right? That's the truth. That's how we see it. We know the pros and cons, and we know when they're BSing us, and when we have a limited option, like in cable or something, it is, we're kind of stuck. But when there are 5,000 cannabis brands, you cross somebody once, that's it. Why would they come back? And then they tell your friend, oh yeah, I overpaid. The first time I bought their eighth, it was great. The second time, it was a $50 jar of garbage, right? And then that's it. You're trapped. So, but unless And if your brand is, we sell inexpensive, and you're like, you know, you'd be happy with what you get because it's $8 a day, that's fine. That's a brand. That's a legit brand. You can be that. There's nothing wrong with it. You just have to know who you are. You have to figure out your goals and who you are. I ramble on a lot. So
Well, this is good. This is good, Joe. It's really important to be very, very serious about who you are and what you're standing for. And that's what resonated from my listening, is that we really need to be clear about what your team is standing for, so you can allow that marketing expert to breathe into it. And I'd like to move on to Greg, Entrepreneur of the Year 2015. Greg, I would really like for you to address what are some of the common misconceptions of what you're up to, what's going on in the industry, and then also how to navigate us here in regards to, you know, we've been in this industry for a couple of years now. The majority of us are in it 2, 3, 4 years now. How can you navigate someone who's, you know, a junior?
Well, perception depends on where you live in the country, right? So let's talk the Midwest, where it's maybe not legal. They think we're all wearing cut-off shorts and tie-dyes, working in a farm. You know, you go to Colorado, they know it's a little different than that now. Everything's getting a little more sophisticated. Technology's kind of taken over. Money's coming in the industry now. You know, the guys that wouldn't answer my call in 2009, 2010 are now calling me every day saying, can we get you money somehow? So that's a changed perception. So those guys had a perception that they're going to throw the money out the window, they're never going to get it back. Now they want to invest in people like me and you and the industry as a whole. So if you measure, you know, the perceptions in different parts of the country, but let's talk about California and like where this big ship, this gray market ship, we don't want to say black market or anything like that anymore because you get lambasted, but you got a big ship that they're trying to turn around and become a compliant ship. Takes a long time. The longer the ship, the bigger the ship, the longer it takes to turn around. So the gray market, Prop 215 market, whatever you want to call it, is a tough one to push the brakes on. And then for guys like me, who, you know, many years ago were on that ship, and in the past decade been on the compliance side, it's refreshing to see some of that movement coming in, but at the same time it kind of hurts your heart because you see these growers that you've known for 10 years up in the Emerald Triangle that are everything on the line and they're losing it. So the industry is gonna have some growing pains with that. You know, everybody perceives the bigger you grow, the more money you have, the more of an outsider, not a weed guy you are. So, you know, big weeds coming to town, and it's really there's that aspect of it, but there's also guys that took the steps and made their way through it, made the mistakes. You know, I know Dave and I have probably between the two of us over 1,000 harvests under our belt, something like that, and never a huge crop failure, but there's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of people that have had, you know, 3 or 4 lights in their basement that are getting head grower positions in Michigan and all these new places. So there's going to be some perception. There's no mark on the Canadian market, but I was up there and it was really hard to find quality. I did end up finding some stuff in Toronto, but so it's all perception from you know, where it's coming from, and then with all, I don't want to say newbies, but people that are coming into the industry that are, you know, we're talking, if you've been in the industry for 3 years, you're a seasoned veteran. So this is the only industry that you can put 3 years up and everybody's like, wow, you've been in cannabis for 3 years. So some people like, you know, Steve D'Angelo and those guys that have really been sticking their neck out for, you know, 2 decades, those are the ones that I have a lot of respect for. So
Absolutely, likewise. So what would be the best resources, in your opinion, for someone who wants to dive in and dig deep?
To start a business or to dive in and dig deep?
Well, with the resources as a farmer and trying to navigate this industry, what would you think are the best resources that are must-haves?
Well, a good consultant would be a really good resource. Those are very difficult to find. So, new industry. So, how do you consult if you've only been doing it for a year? But there's you know, get a good consultant, get a plan, and if you need to, you know, raise money nowadays, it's different. So you got to kind of hire some folks to help you because everybody's putting out these really nice investor packets, investor decks, and look, you know, here's the bottom line: in 5 years you're going to be a billionaire, right? Well, we all know cannabis is a long-term investment. It's a fast growth industry, but profits are, it's going to take a while to get the profits there because there's so many people calling into the industry right now, and you got to be really efficient. So I would say learn what you're doing, master what you're doing, crawl before you walk, walk before you run. And if you do have to run, because you're trying to get a big piece of the market, make sure you're hiring really good people and hiring really good consultants that have proven track record.
So as a first-year farmer, or second, what would you choose for the farmer? If the farmer's saying, hey, what do I do in regards to genetics and seeds? Would you launch someone on a trajectory of using clones or using, a specific seed?
So I would do clones. It takes a while to get your right seeds going. You can have 10 seeds of the same plant, and only 2 of those cultivars are good. So proven clones, proven genetics are great. The hemp industry is really big right now, so that's from seed. So if you're getting seed, there's about 4 or 5 really good seed companies give you 90% germination rates and above, which is really good for a new industry with producing seed. But so in an indoor cultivation or a greenhouse, I would start with clones, but I'm sure there's other guys that would start with seeds. There's a lot of guys experimenting with autoflower seeds so they can get more revenue throughout the summer months for these outdoor grows. Some of that's bad quality, so it depends on your. And myself, we're going with clones.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I would like to just reserve some time for Q&A, if it's a good time for that, Celeste? Okay. So Christine, I believe, has the mic. Anyone have some questions at this time? I see one hand. Middle to your right.
Thank you. Great. So I come from the traditional agriculture side, and so I'm a crop consultant, CCA, out here in California, and I've worked for like the biggest fertilizer company in the world. So I know farmers always have people banging on their doors saying, hey, we have the latest, greatest gizmo that will give you 1,000,000% yield, and check out our drones, it's going to tell you everything, and blah, 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 right? And I'm just wondering, is that the same for the cannabis industry? I would assume so, because it's still agriculture. And then 2, how would you propose someone that's looking to get in through that door to speak to the master decision maker? How would you propose that someone would be able to cut through the noise of everyone else?
So I'll take that. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen in this industry, just like anything else. It's a red flag industry, so everybody's trying to get their piece of the pie. So funny story, I was on vacation once, and early on in the day, it was like 2010, we had a cultivation going, and I had my assistant manager was watching for the weekend. A guy came in and sold him a bottle this big, like 50 milliliters. And if you put 2 drops in this, it's going to double your harvest. So came back, he was so excited to tell me, I paid, I think it was like $800 or something. Like, I paid $800, I got this, you're going to boss, you're going to make so much money. So I just sent it to the lab to analyze it. It was Visine, so yeah, in a little bit bigger bottle. So there is that in every industry, and really a lot right now. But guys like you that come in from ag, we're learning a lot from that. I've met with some of the biggest tomato growers in the country, and the stuff that they have, the stuff like Flower One's doing in Las Vegas. Those guys know how to produce. They're in a greenhouse that looks great. We'll see what the test's like. So to get to the decision maker, it's going to take a lot. I mean, it's like a guy trying to sell vape pens in a dispensary. You got to knock on that door, beat your head, bring donuts, that kind of stuff. I don't need donuts. But, to get to the, guys like Dave who are on the site every day for Gold Flora, most of it's coming through your supplier, and most of that stuff's already proven. A lot of people have test rooms, but if you have a product that works, news travels fast in this industry, because all the cultivators talk to one another, and when we get a pest problem, we're on the phone, hey, we got this, what do you got? So if it works, it's going to be really easy. If it doesn't, you'll be knocking for a while. Yeah.
Well, and that's, if I can just chime in for a bit, like that's one of the things too. The people that are the decision makers, people like Dave, they are ridiculously busy too. Right? Like they've got their head almost literally in the dirt. They've got a million problems that they're dealing with. And that's kind of what I was talking about as far as communication is concerned, right? It's really difficult to bend their ear because until they're ready. And I mean, when they are ready for an answer, when they're like in our industry, like when they're ready for that post-production section of things, if you got to be ready to just kind of step in and be like, hey, I'm right here. I've been waiting for 2 months, but that's okay. I'm ready now. So, I mean, that's a big part of it too, is just, watch for your time. It will come, has to come, because you will be relevant eventually. You have to be. That stuff comes along. And so as long as you take and you make sure you keep your presence known somehow, your time will come that you can take and step in and be in the right place at the right time. Our company, that's how we've grown. We've not chased very often. It's been much more of a just being available at the right time, and we've been able to grow with that. That's been a huge success for us, to just be available at the right time as well, and navigating that time.
Engagement is everything, and timing.
Can I put something on that?
I have a quick question, Amy.
Go for it.
Peter, for you, I know you guys have not been primarily too much in the cannabis industry at this point. It's something you guys are coming from a traditional farming market looking into. From your perspective, from an outside view on what you see into crop and farm management, what do you see from the commercial ag area that can be improved in the cannabis industry from what the commercial ag can bring to it? In a short 2-minute answer, because we have one more question.
So speaking to that quickly, I would say, and it's something that has been touched on kind of throughout the last 2 days. There are certain zones where this is becoming legal and more available. We're lucky in Canada. The federal government just kind of blanket legalized it over the whole country. We definitely count ourselves lucky as far as that's concerned. It makes logistics a lot easier. It makes all that a lot easier. But what we're finding, especially because we're still new to this, there's not a lot of openness to talk and share notes and that sort of thing, which is something that you guys are in the States. In the states that it is legal, you're finding that people are opening up a little bit more. I would say that probably that's the biggest thing, is just, definitely want to vet people and make sure that who you're talking to is someone that you want to be talking to. But, if I can encourage you to really take and be willing to those people that are, coming to your door that you maybe don't know a lot about or whatever, but at least bend your ear for a minute and give them a chance, give them an opportunity to kind of see what they're bringing to the table, and then how you can benefit from that. Commercial ag, for sure. Farmers for years already, especially in our area, we're in Essex County in Ontario. We're not super flashy by any means, but we've got a ton of greenhouses there. The farmers there have been doing it for generations already. And they've gone through, these growing pains and that sort of thing. So there's definitely a lot of stuff that they can bring to the table that you can take and absolutely be able to learn from. So, yeah.
Broad-based question. Whoa, a little loud there, sorry. Broad-based question. I don't know if we're going to have enough time for the responses, but I'd love to hear from each of you individually if it's plausible. If you're a corn farmer or a soybean farmer, right, and you're assuming your VFD's right, your soil's right, or you have a good soil amendment partner or whatever, what are the top 3 risks in having a first-year successful crop?
Great question.
I'm from Iowa, so I know a little bit corn and soybeans, but top 3 risks is your people, your employees, getting the right people in place. They got to care about the plants. They got to care about their job. They can't just go through the actions. If they're not into it, they're going to make a mistake. One, like Dave said, one flushing mistake or one nutrient mistake would be huge. So I'll just do one of the things, so I'll let those guys do some of the other ones.
Well, obviously part of having a successful crop is being able to get rid of it, right? It's not successful just sitting in a big pile. So anytime you're selling a product, you have to consider the way that people make decisions, right? And there's a spectrum on the way that people make decisions. Everybody, all of us, no matter how much we want to deny it to ourselves, we make a decision on the spectrum. How the product or service influences our relationship with the group, and or affects our relationship with the group, and how the product or service affects our relationship with ourselves. right? So that's, you need to start, when you're getting out there ready to sell anything, you need to start with that understanding, kind of figure out how you're going to market on that scale. So am I going out like, for example, like Dove chocolate bars or something, they'll be like, this is for you, it's a special thing, and it's, you know, you don't even, you're on a diet, but you don't need to tell anybody that we're appealing to your relationship with yourself. Where other stuff you might see like, oh, it's a big group party scene, oh, I need to drink Pepsi because Pepsi will make everybody else is drinking Pepsi, and the cohorts that I, you know, intermingle through, they all drink Pepsi, and if I don't drink Pepsi, if I drink Dr. Pepper, I'm gonna look like I don't. If it is, you gotta figure out that part, right? You gotta figure out, you know, which side of that you're going to, because if you don't, you're going to have this huge splintered marketing campaign, and you're going to be putting a little bit of money in a lot of different directions and making very little impact. So you got to kind of figure out that part with your brand, like who are we, what direction are we going to take when we market? You know, are we something that's personal, a little, are we just like, oh, this is like mommy's choice joint, right? And you go like sneak away when the kids are sleeping so you can freaking relax. I'm a stay-at-home dad, so I have some.
Okay, thanks, Joe. But from a corn or a soybean farmer perspective, right? How do you translate what you've been as a soybean farmer, and what do you need? What will it take, Dave, Peter, what is it going to take for that soybean farmer to flip a crop over into the marijuana or hemp space, right, Brian? Is that really what you're asking about? What will it take machine-wise? They have a team, so how much of that will be translatable?
Yeah, so I mean, from my perspective, I don't know how much I could speak exactly to that, but I mean, you know, from a broader perspective, something that's been mentioned a couple times already too, cross your T's, dot your I's, make sure you have a plan in place. That seems obvious, but sometimes the detail, it's lost in the detail. That's where the devil sits, right? We have that saying too. So I mean, if you can really take and make sure that you have a plan in place for all of that, the marketing side, the actual growing side, that's all really important too. But I mean, research, right? You spend your time knowing what is translatable and what isn't is going to be key. There are people that have done this before. Reach out to those people. You know, you're not the first one. There are other people that have done, maybe not a ton, and like Greg mentioned, I mean, you know, 2-3 years that you've been doing this, and you're an expert, but still, they have some value they can have.
Any final thoughts from Dave, Mr. Cultivation?
Yep. Everyone on the panel said, you know, exactly what you need to do. You know, really make sure your employees are passionate and are sticking to the details of all the different tasks that have to be done, from pruning to defoliation to harvest. All your processes are in place and exactly planned out what you want to do. And going from a soybean or corn perspective, you know, you're going to have from that side, you know, huge acreage that you're maintaining, and making that switch to cannabis is, I think, it's just a little bit more attention to detail on the plant and bringing your energy to the plant. As cliche as much as that might sound, but you know, make sure that you know each plant is attended for individually, and that once again your SOPs are in place to you know, adequately harvest it. You know, utilizing some automation with irrigation, with harvesting, can go a long way.
We have to wrap up, but do you need to prep the soil after you have corn, soybean, cotton? Is there a transition period for the farm itself? Or if a farm's going to flip, I'm done with corn, can you grow a successful crop, you know, right after? Or is there a season of transition?
It depends on what you're going to do. You're going to do industrial hemp, you're going to grow plants for oil, industrial hemp, go for it, flip it. The other, you might have a lot of chemicals and pesticides in the soil that are okay for corn, soybeans, that you know, hemp plant, cannabis plants made, it soaks all that stuff up, it cleans up its environment. So if you got some nasty stuff that's okay to eat but not vape or smoke in the ground, then you need to hire a soil engineer actually, and not try to do it yourself.
Well, that's a really good nugget to remediate with hemp before you grow the marijuana. How's that? Cousins helping each other.
could, yeah, or you could go above the ground with the soil too. I've seen a bunch of different ways, but I'll throw you a card and I can hook you up with a guy. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to us and your time and attention.
Thank you so
We're all
much,
available
Amy.
after the talk.
Thank you, panelists.